Rajan, unmute.
Yeah. Hello all. Yeah. Can you hear me now? Yep. Cool. Okay. Hello all. So this is welcome all of you. I think there are quite a few familiar faces who have joined in today, and there are quite a new faces as well. So as per the tradition of OMPEG, we sort of give you a quick introduction about what OMPEG is about. OMPEC stands for Overseas Maharashtrian Professionals and Entrepreneurs Group, a community-based business networking group founded in April 2016 by leading influencers and entrepreneurs within the UK. The idea was to inculcate a spirit of entrepreneurship within the Maharashtrian community, specifically from the UK, to connect professionals and encourage them to entrepreneurship journey. OMPEG is a membership organization, which means people pay fees here and contribute to the growth and initiatives of OMPEG. There are over 150 fee-paying members, proud members, which include a variety of professionals and entrepreneurs across different business industries. Details regarding becoming a member will be posted in the chat window soon. So please make sure you have a look at the chat windows. We'll be posting all the links, etc., about OMPEG and how you can become a member if you wish to. We are very proud to say that 40% of our members are women who are first generation entrepreneurs. In the last 5 years, OMPEG organized 40 plus high value events, including 2 mega business expos attended by almost 1,500 to 2,000 people. And those expos were really high success to showcase for the businesses. Until now, more than 5,000 people in the last 5 years have attended OMPEG events across the UK physically or virtually. In 2019-20, OMPEC started collaboration with High Commission of India, UK, and many other industry bodies with the idea to inspire many more Maharashtrians to do more in their professional as well as business careers. The goal was always to raise the profile of UK-based Maharashtrian business leadership, and we are proud to say that OMPEC has successfully achieved that over the last 5 years, and next 5 years we'll do it much bigger as well. Just few months ago, we started our Midlands chapter, which is focusing on Midlands area so that we can have more involved community feeling within the Midlands group. If you want to know more, please visit www.ompeg.org.uk. If you wish to become a member, the details will be posted, as I said, in the chat window again. One of the important milestones I would say about OMPEG is we have our own collaboration platform, which is called My OMPEG. You can visit Android or iOS App Store or Play Store, and you will find My OMPEG as an app there, which is an excellent way of promoting yourself, posting promotions about your businesses, and also get to know more and more like-minded people on that particular platform. So please make sure it's free to join, it's free to download. The only thing is that the fee paying members get more privileges like posting for promotions, etc. But definitely everyone welcome. Please download My OMPEG as and when you can. In fact, you can download it today. So that's about OMPEG. And now coming back to the event that we have today. As per the promise of OMPEG, we want to make sure that we give you more and more content in terms of the cutting edge technologies that the industry is going into. Because being into professional and entrepreneurship journeys, people definitely need these things. So with that in mind, we are really delighted and we welcome Pratap Tambe, who is our today subject matter expert for blockchain webinar. Just a few introduction. I mean, Pratap needs a very long introduction, but in the interest of time today, I'll just shorten it for you. Pratap, to his credit, from an academic pursuit perspective, he has a proud association with IIT Mumbai and as well as IISc Bangalore. So two prestigious academic institutes in India. And over more than 2 decades, he has been into IT industry, and now he heads a blockchain consulting for banking, finance, and insurance stream with Tata Consultancy Services. And his focus is UK, Ireland, and Europe. So we have a really one of the few blockchain evangelists and experts who would be giving us some knowledge nuggets over the next 1 hour or so. So without further ado, I welcome Pratap, and I welcome all of you. And over to you, Pratap, to deliver the good lecture to us. Thank you.
Yeah. So I'll share my screen and started. Okay. So thanks to thanks to OMPEC for this opportunity, and I'm delighted to see a lot of people joining from all over. I will try to make this very relevant. But the first, a very important point. I work for Tata Consultancy Services, but these are my personal views and not those of Tata Consultancy Services. I will also, not be able to mention names, of customers when we have conversations. So, that will be one of the constraints that we will have to operate under. Uh, so let's start with what are blockchains. Uh, Blockchains, my own journey in blockchain started in August 2015, where I was the first in the world to describe how blockchains can be applied to insurance. And since then, I have given lots of public talks and all. Generally, the way I explain blockchains is, everybody has used a browser to visit a website. So when you use a browser, you use the browser to construct a transaction. You fill things into the various text boxes and so on, and that's how you construct a transaction. And then the browser proposes a transaction to a server, which is the web server, and you specify the URL of that server, and you propose the transaction. That server validates the transaction, and if it is okay, then it executes it and saves the data. In blockchain, what happens is that just in the same way, the browser constructs a transaction, and instead of proposing it to a node, a server, it proposes to a family of servers, to a group of servers. Each server basically does that validation, and they may validate different aspects of the transaction potentially. And then they together undergo something called, if everything is okay, then they undergo something called a consensus process. And if the process succeeds, then that data is saved. And so this is the common part between blockchain and the other name for it, DLT. From here on, in the case of DLT, what happens is that the data is stored in such a manner, in a chain of blocks, such that you cannot change the latest block unless you change the one before it, and you can't change that unless you change the one before it. And to change any block, you need majority to agree with you. So therefore, so that is the difference between blockchains and DLT. This chain of blocks concept is not necessary in DLT. So fundamentally, therefore, what does that make blockchain? It's a peer-to-peer network, like it's you see in that diagram on the right-hand side. It used to maintain a distributed database. What that means is that copies of the data are stored at each of the nodes. And there are people who are given permissions. In the permissioned case, there are two types of networks. There are private blockchains and public blockchains. In the private blockchains, basically, a consortium controls who can validate or participate in the consensus process. In the permissionless networks, there's no restriction, and anybody can validate and participate in the consensus process. So that is basically the concept of blockchain. And when we say the longest chain, whichever is the longest chain, each party has copy of the data, and the longest chain is the correct chain. So moving on from them, why is blockchain so useful and important? What are the characteristics of blockchain which gives it its importance? So there are various properties. Let's start with immutability. So I told you that when you propose a transaction and it is saved to the database, then everybody has a copy of it, and everybody has there is a chain of blocks that unless you change the latest block, unless you change the block before and the one before, you can't change the latest block. So because of that property of blockchains, it is practically immutable. Practically immutable is a very important term. It is not theoretically tamper proof. It is tamper evident. So if somebody were to make changes in that, then other parties would come to know that something has changed. So immutability is one of the important properties of blockchain, but it is not tamper proof, it is tamper evident. Another thing that is said about blockchains is that it is a great tool for for this, when you propose a transaction to a group of servers,
Okay, looks like we are having a connection problem with Pratap. Please bear with us. We'll get it solved.
Yeah, please bear with.
We are sorting it out in the background. Please bear with us for a minute. Thank you. We seem to be having a connection problem. We'll be back with you shortly. Please bear with us. Pratap, do you want to restart or rejoin? Pratap, if you can hear me, can you? Rajan, can you please inform people what's happening? So I'll communicate with Pratap in the background. Thank you.
So for those who have been listening to that, we have some problems on Pratap's side in terms of the bandwidth, etc. So I think Ani is in the background trying to sort it out. So please bear with us. In the meantime, as I said in the beginning, for those who are new to OMPIC, please make sure you can use this time to actually go through www.ompic.org.uk, wherein you will find the information about what OMPIC is about and how you can also become a part of the OMPIC. And also there is a My OMPIC app which is sort of free to download for everyone, available on both App Store and the Play Store. So in the meantime, while we're trying to sort out the issue on the presentation side, please make sure you know more about OMPIC or understand more about My OMPIC app as well.
Can you hear me now? I'm back.
Yes, we can hear you, Pratap. Yes.
Okay. So not sure where you lost me. Did I cover immutability and then get lost, or?
I think after the first slide, I think we haven't gone much further. So I think after this, I think probably it might be better if we start a little bit from this slide itself. Yeah.
Okay, sure. So in blockchain, one of the key properties of blockchain is immutability. So when we say immutability, that means there is a chain of blocks, and because you can't change the last block until you change the whole list of blocks, so that gives it a kind of immutability. You cannot, whatever has been written to the blockchain is practically, it's a append-only database and does not really change. But you have to be careful. This is tamper evident and not tamper proof. Theoretically, it is possible to for blockchain data to be changed. But if somebody changes it, then the others come to know that it has been done. So that is immutability. Second thing is that disintermediation. This is very important. Throughout human history, whenever people wanted to do a set of transactions, they had to invent a trusted third party. Blockchain is so like, for example, when we transfer money to each other across geographies and so on, there is a whole network of banks which basically uses double entry account bookkeeping and reconcile with each other. And that is how basically they facilitate a transaction between two parties separated by a network of banks. And that is so there is a whole intermediary network which facilitates the payment. Bitcoin, on the other hand, does not have any intermediaries in between, and they are able to do these transactions without requiring all this thing, and therefore it is much more cheaper to transfer this money. When we compare the relative cost of a Bitcoin transaction with the whole cost of this whole network of banks, that is the right comparison, and people unfortunately don't make that comparison. So that's basically the disintermediation aspect. Sometimes these intermediaries add value, brokers add value, but if they don't add value, then blockchain is a mechanism to take them out. Then let's talk about near real-time settlement. So as I said, when you use a browser to propose a transaction to a group of servers, all of them have viewed it beforehand and validated it before it is settled. So in some sense, there is, because they have all had a view of validated it before the hand. There is no need for any clearing it. Transaction clearing and settlement are practically the same. So you can have near real-time settlement, and that's a big value addition. Changes the whole game. Another thing is that because for the same reason, since everybody has seen all the data before it is saved, so it naturally becomes, and then it does not change. So that becomes a single source of truth. So single source of truth is very useful for driving lots of analytical use cases. So blockchain essentially maintains the integrity of data, and then you can pump data out into analytical engines to drive analytical use cases. So that is the single value of truth aspect. And then smart contracts. Smart contracts are nothing new. We have known them under the name of stored procedures for a very long time. But what is different about smart contracts in the blockchain context is that the stored procedures that we are all familiar with were used in an intra-enterprise context, or if it was in an in a multi-enterprise scenario, then it was the trusted party running the stored procedures. But smart contracts in the blockchain context is a process of automating business processes which cross enterprise boundaries, and therefore our contracts between can be can be mapped to legal contracts between different parties. So that is the real benefit of smart contracts. And then this last property is my favorite property: automate and exponentiate trust. So when you automate one transaction between one set of servers, so if you propose a transaction type and you build the validation and the consensus and so on, and you have automated one transaction, that is basically you have automated trust for one transaction. But once you have automated trust for one transaction, then it becomes possible to exponentiate that. What does that mean? That means you can tweak the logic or the transaction type a bit, the data fields in it, the validations and the consensus and so on, and you can tweak that a bit, and you can add one more stakeholder. So and then basically you have a slightly different transaction serving a totally new set of stakeholders. So this is exponentiation of trust. So once you have automated trust, you can exponentiate that trust to other parties. This is one of my favorite parts at characteristics of blockchain. This is what gives blockchain its value. In traditional systems, if you wanted to add some new functionalities and add a new stakeholder, that means really it becomes very difficult. So this is one of the very unique properties of blockchain. And one of the things that all of this together give blockchain its value. So moving on from here, what are the different types of use cases for blockchain? So first is that as I said, when you have a process which crosses enterprise boundaries, blockchain is the best way of automating processes which cross these boundaries. And that's one of the typical there is in such scenarios there is no better technology than blockchain. Then when you have multiple parties updating one data set, some people updating, writing, some people modifying, some people adding things and so on, and you want to create a consolidated data source in near real time from that while following various compliance rules, then blockchain is again one of the best technology for that. So it can do all of this and maintain integrity of the data and do this in near real time. So that is one of the best things about blockchain. The third type of use case that blockchain gets used for is system security. Aadhaar, for example, or many user ID, use user ID and password. So I'm really tired of this password, remembering passwords. I keep forgetting my pensions password every year, and I have to reset it every year and so on. And the centralized security system, the user ID password, or whether it is a Facebook ID password or whether it's a Google ID password, it is basically a honeypot of data, and it is like a billboard on the internet saying, "Come and hack me." And that is basically, because when the person hacks the data, then he can throttle off access to that system, and everybody's data records are compromised. So this is which is not good. And besides, you have to remember so many passwords. It's a big pain. So this is absolutely not a 2021 type of approach. There are decentralized security is much better, where basically what you can use is something called self-sovereign identity, which is specific to an individual, and where your data is stored in a data store of your preference. It could be very well your phone or a server that you trust, and only your keys are stored there, only your data is stored there. So so even if you get hacked, if one person gets hacked, only that person's data is lost, not everybody else's data is lost. And then if there is a hacking, then the access to the core system whose security is controlled is not lost because of this. So that's one of the other benefits of one benefit of blockchain, using blockchain for system security. And then we talked about the immutability and single source of truth. So that those are the things that give risk and benefits of risk and fraud. There is one nuance here, which is that if you you have to digitally sign a transaction when you submit it. So it is very necessary for the digital signature to have legal validity through a through a contract appropriately assigning those liabilities. So that is what is very necessary for leveraging this blockchain for these kind of use cases. And then I spoke about self-sovereign digital identity, which is a blockchain-enabled capability, which gives end users control over their information. Today, lots of people collect PII and use it to set cookies on your devices and then track your information and so on. So all of this is basically because people are storing your PII in their systems and generating GDPR risk and for themselves and cyber risk for themselves, again creating honeypots of PII, which just extremely creates cyber risk. So the blockchain enables self-sovereign identities give end users control over their information. If they can provide the information to whoever they want and how much ever information they want. They might even provide more information than people are looking for, so on. So that is another application of blockchains, which is this concept has a lot of benefits, which I will talk about some of them. All of these kind of things and the exponential of trust concept essentially enables lots of new types of business models, and that is where really the business value of blockchain comes into its own. So moving on, there are different types of blockchain ecosystems. You can have an intra-enterprise blockchain. Intra-enterprise normally is not a suitable use case and certainly will not be for MSMEs. For large corporates, especially large global corporates, there can be intra-enterprise blockchains. The best example of this is JPM coin. JP Morgan has launched in the market, a coin which is there in the public domain. So it is used for payment transfers between customers of JP Morgan across different geographies. So that's an example of an intra-enterprise system. Existing ecosystem refers to customer, supplier, distributor kind of ecosystem, and there basically all the supply chain kind of applications come in. Now these can be single customer, single enterprise systems, or they can be multi-enterprise as well. So that's a customer, supplier, distributor ecosystem. And then you can have a regulator-driven ecosystem. So there are regulator-driven blockchains coming up. The central bank digital currency, which you might have heard of, is an example of regulator-driven blockchain. So where here basically the thing about these first three cases is that there is one party who basically practically can mandate, do it my way, or or drop out of the ecosystem. So that there is some kind of mandate. But in the remaining two cases, this kind of mandate is not possible. Next is the peers in the same industry. So peers in the same industry, best example that I can give is about in the insurance area, there is B3I, where basically insurers and reinsurers and people in the same industry got together and built an ecosystem. So that's an example of peers in the same industry. And then you can have cross-industry ecosystems. The best example of that is electrical vehicles. In electrical vehicles, the energy companies, the retailers, the banks, and various other industries have to collaborate in order to ensure that the electrical vehicle, the providers of the manufacturer of the electrical vehicle also is one of the other key parties. So in order to make sure that you have a practical ecosystem to enable electrical vehicles to operate, so you need a cross-industry ecosystem. So there are various types of ecosystems, and all of them can potentially have blockchain applications. Intra-enterprise, you have to be very careful whether it is really necessary or not, because within an enterprise, sometimes non-blockchain technologies may be a better option. So this is the general introduction to blockchain section. Now I'm going to talk about the big picture from an MSME manager's point of view. That there is a lot of time spent on operational things and a lot less time spent on strategic things. While what we want to move towards is a situation where you spend more time on strategic things and less time on operational things. So the business, and because business environment has become volatile, there is Brexit, there is pandemic, there is climate change, cyber security, there are lots of compliance requirements and disruptions going on. So you have to be, it's a very, very, very volatile business environment. And then there are lots of opportunities though. So you can leverage technology for operations, marketing, collaborating with rivals. This collaborating with rivals is something which is new. It has really increased, and blockchain is a big part of that. So there are not everything that you do in business is strategic to your business. So there are various ways for sharing the non-strategic elements with other parties, and that's where basically this collaboration with rivals comes through, and so on. So that's where the opportunities come from. And then the biggest thing you can do with your business is to make it more and more digital. So we are seeing so many different things getting digital, the Ubers and the Airbnbs and the various other Uberized models that are coming into place. There is hardly anything, whether it is Deliveroo, Uber Eats, all of this. So many things are getting digitalized. Or in India, my favorite example is Maima. Maima is a platform which essentially enables. I'm not talking about blockchains here. They don't use blockchains, but it's a platform where basically housewives can essentially create food and sell food, food delivery. Technology is being used. But when you use technology to create new business models, you have to be, when anybody says this digital, I always listen. I always hear that there is a lot of risk. Digital means risk. That there are different types of risk, and especially the ones that I think you can, deep fakes. Deep fakes is one of the ones that can increase. And I recently spoke publicly about how one of the how blockchain technology can help in mitigating deep fakes. Then you can have loops of instability in the financial markets because decisions are being made by effectively by robots. So you can have basically one robot triggering another robot, and that robot triggering a third robot, and therefore the market going into a meltdown. So these kind of things have happened in the financial markets. Then we have bias, gender bias, racial bias, various types of bias in software. So there are various types of risk, and then there are regulatory implications of that. And GDPR, which I spoke about, despite GDPR having been implemented, people are still storing PII in their databases. And then there are various challenges when you want to automate multi-party processes. So there in that I spoke about already. So this is the big picture. And now let's get into the specific applications relevant to MSMEs. So one of the MSMEs can participate in blockchains which can basically do order to cash audit trails. What in the past what used to happen was that when audits need to be done between a customer, supplier, partner, etc. ecosystems. So what used to happen is that the auditor used to go in. He used to request each party for sample data, and then basically he would make sense of that data and try to validate all the transactions. Now, I don't know if you have noticed, but the number of audit lapses that have happened, where basically the company was being toasted this month and the next month it's collapsed. This is the number of incidents like this that have happened in the last few years, or in the last 5-10 years, has been has been a lot. And why is this happening? Basically because because there's a lot of digitalization and all, and unless you are careful, the sample based audit and human interpretation and all, is not going to really work. So this is not something, I'm not suggesting that MSMEs take leadership in creating these kind of blockchains. What I'm saying is that MSMEs have an opportunity to participate in these blockchains, so that the audit and compliance can be done. So I have a feeling that this has to be led by the larger corporates, but wherever there are opportunities that MSMEs can participate in order to cash blockchains, which enable 100% audit and compliance, and which reduces the audit and compliance cost for the MSME as well. So we can talk about this further. So how this works and so on, what are the benefits? Uh, there are various human interpretation benefits as well. This is automated audit of 100%. So it typically, otherwise the auditor has to know what are the GDPR rules, he has to keep track of the cyber security risk, and manage the data which has been sent carefully. And then it is all subject to human interpretation. Then different humans, if one auditor were to audit the same data, he would say it is all right. Then somebody else were to audit, he will find something fault with it. So all of those kind of issues can be eliminated using blockchains in this particular area. Then it is possible to raise capital in new ways. So you can issue securities on blockchain to raise money, and this enables new transparency, control, and lowers cost of security issue and management. So this is already happening, and people can do it. In the cost of raising is very little. In fact, the number of people who have raised money through ICOs, was very high. But now basically it is being brought under regulatory umbrella, and so there is slightly more process to it, and there's more. But these are, both of these examples, for example, and indicate that there are new skills and new opportunities to do things in new ways that MSMEs can leverage. And there are so that's another. Then there are there are trade finance blockchains, and this is one of the prime reasons why I wanted to talk about this. This is something to really leverage. Traditionally, in the last 50 years ago, there are two types of trading approaches. One is called open account trading, and one is called documentary trade. So if a seller in India wants to sell something to somebody in London, then basically there are these two methods: open account trading and documentary trade. So open account trading is suitable when both the parties know each other and are willing to take risk. But the documentary trade is the one which is slightly more cumbersome and painful. But basically there is a third party, the bank usually, and maybe an insurer, which takes risk and reduces the risk for the people participating. So this is the area where especially India and Latin America and a few other countries, where a lot of new suppliers are coming on board. And there are tools and techniques like the trade finance blockchains like Marco Polo and TradeLens, where basically which can be leveraged for uh, doing trade. And in these cases, what happens is that you can get basically fund your receivables. So Marco Polo does it for open account trading, and there is another called Contour which does it for documentary trade. So this is a great opportunity for corporates, and these kind of things are not applicable only to cross-border trade, but also for intra-country trade. In India, for example, there is a local solution more suited for India, within India trade, etc. So there may be similar ones in the UK as well. So that's about working capital loans. So working capital is a big challenge for MSMEs, and this is one of the ways you can unlock your receivables even before the other party has received the goods. Then account receivable and payable automation. So MSMEs have very little people and skills to spend on the account payable and account receivable management. So this is a way in which you can operate. If you join a blockchain which does this automation, so you have to put the receipts, invoices, and settlement process on blockchains, which can accelerate the ARP processes, and you can do this with or without working capital loans, which I just described. So these are some of the processes, and the thing to note about this is, you may have, whether you have read of this or not in the public domain, there are various kind of things. These kind of things have been going on, and it is not, if somebody has found something nice that can be done with the technology, not everybody is going to shout about it in the public domain. The intra-company currency, I already gave the example of JPM coin. So I'm not suggesting that MSMEs create their own JPM coin. I'm saying that wherever there is an opportunity to work with people like, with such kind of coins, there may be opportunities that MSMEs should leverage those, because effectively, these are all open virgin territories or new ways of doing things, which can give you some or the other competitive advantage. So that's why you should consider and explore these options. And all of this is still developing area, so there are some risks as well. But if you learn to do it properly, there may be significant advantages as well. Then procure to pay. So there are ways, there are procure to pay applications being considered in various large corporates. So if you want to be a supplier in the procurement chains of multiple procurement blockchains, then there is an opportunity for MSMEs to do that. And you need to have these skills, and you need to have some understanding of them to leverage these procure to pay blockchains, so you can become a supplier to people. There are implications for MSME risk management. So external risk, insurance risk transfer. So MSMEs can transfer various risks, to insure to blockchains like the B3I blockchain, or through directly or through brokers, and that can really simplify things from them. And these can be integrated into their own offerings. This is one of the key things. So for example, if you are, if you are when you solicit a customer, that portal which you build can itself be integrated into some of these things, so that your customer gets a better experience. You can bundle things into your own offerings. So that's the kind of thing which reduces, which may give you some commission income as well, and so on, and which will be good for your customer as well. Then leveraging insurance risk pools. This is one of my favorite concepts. So there are lots of insurance pools where basically uh, like there are to give an example about this, in something called protection and indemnity insurance in shipping. So there are group shipping networks which have basically these pools. So group of ships essentially pools money and pays for claims out of that. So there are such kind of platforms available, whether you want to create your own pool, like an OMPEG pool or something like that, or join some existing pools. And there are pools that are available, operating bicycle pools and so on. There are various types of pools available, and people are offering this kind of services. You can explore some of those to reduce your risk. Then I already spoke about supply chain. The Marco Polo type of examples, where you can transfer risk in terms of trade credit, business interruption, marine aviation, cargo. So some of this may be relevant to people doing food businesses here locally, or various other such businesses, or wanting to explore the new business opportunities in doing these things itself as a representative of some of these parties. There may be opportunities in reducing risks in the supply chain as well. There's a lot of construction that the global supply chains are refactoring, and there is a lot of opportunity according to the research reports that I have read, some of which may be applicable to MSMEs as well. Then external risk transfers. MSMEs can transfer financial risk to third parties by leveraging guarantees, sureties, letters of credit, financial derivatives provided over specialized blockchain platforms. So I'm not sure all of them are relevant. At least the guarantees and sureties are relevant for those involved in global trading, or whether it is on a small scale. Even if it is on a small scale, some of these things will be quite useful. Then, as I was saying, that you can integrate insurance risk transfers and financial risk transfers into your business processes and website to improve your offering and customer experience. Then reducing cyber risk, you can stop storing PII in your systems. If you have a website, almost everybody has a website these days. Many of them are transactional. Don't store PII in your system. If you use self-sovereign identities, then you don't need to. Customers can voluntarily give you a lot of information, and you can improve your onboarding processes as well as various other business processes using blockchain-based self-sovereign digital identities. And that's one thing. And another thing is that the iconic use case that I spoke about in another case scenario was that you keep getting these calls from this is more futuristic. You keep getting calls from the HMRC saying that you're going to be arrested if you don't pay so much money and all. So those kind of scenarios, you can tell them, prove that you are the HMRC, and those kind of you can do that using and cyber risk is a major problem for MSMEs, and there is adopting some of these techniques and tools and techniques can significantly reduce cyber risk. There are some things that can be done immediately. There are some things which will probably take some more time. Implications for MSME people management. People onboarding process. When basically, suppose you have selected a person, you have to validate whether they have the credentials that they are claiming. I'm aware of people in the UK who are in very good jobs with proper visas and all, whose degrees are suspect. So so these kind of due diligence, there are parties which do this who have the business of validating some of these, but technology can be used to simplify this whole process of credential management, and this thing has begun, and it is accelerating soon. In the UK has released its regulations for using these kind of identities, and that movement is accelerating a lot. So there's a great opportunity for MSMEs to play various roles in the process of doing this, as well as in the process of leveraging these technologies for doing things. MSMEs can use self-sovereign identities to validate skills and credentials of people that they hire, as well as provide skill credentials to their staff, which their staff can use after they leave the MSME. So hiring and training are things that MSMEs also need to do, and basically various training providers need to do. So depending on what your business is, there may be various different opportunities for you as this changes in the industry. Then reducing the risk in operations, it is possible to leverage SSI to monitor health and safety, modern slavery, and bullying in organizations. These are legal requirements, and there are techniques described in a paper written by me and Prerna, which describes how this can be done, and this can be leveraged. Then better management of benefits. There are various offerings from which can leverage SSI as well as blockchain to improve employee experience of benefits. Employee points, life protection, pensions, healthcare. So this may seem not relevant too much to MSMEs, but depending on what size of MSME you are, some of this is applicable, because pensions, for example, are mandatory at a particular level. I think 35 employees or something, and then some of the other benefits basically can add significant value to your employees. So there are tools and techniques that you can use to improve the employee experience, especially of onboarding and availing of the business processes here. Another key thing, this is applicable to MSMEs, not primarily from the large corporate side, but from the agency worker side. So if you are working with large corporates, whether it is large corporates, then large corporates are beginning to use various processes for onboarding agency workers, and MSMEs can be providing these agency workers. And the process of onboarding and managing the agency workers and automating processes while being compliant to regulations, can be, or that is something that multi-party work processes can be used. So MSMEs having the capabilities to integrate into these processes with multiple corporates can significantly give advantage to the MSMEs to participate in this multi-party work process from the agency side. There will need to be a corporate which will have these kind of approaches, but MSMEs can look at it from the agency side. There are a lot of opportunities for using SSI and blockchains for Uberization of work, and the best example I gave in a recent talk was that suppose a train comes into a workshop, and then basically if there is some work, if you are leveraging third-party workers or your own employees, then how does one break that work into components, and how do you get your own employees as well as agency workers to bid for them, so that you fulfill the work while giving maximum flexibility to your workers in choosing the work that fits their timeline and their preferences of what they want to do. So that's the kind of thing, and these kind of things can be done using blockchain. Implications for MSME operations. Already, blockchains can help you improve traceability and accountability in the supply chain. Traceability example is checking whether something is organic, whether all the certificates are there or organic from the relevant people, or whether who is responsible for damage to the product during the supply chain. Sometimes if you can't identify the ownership of who's basically caused the damage, then you cannot it adds a whole then liabilities, management becomes a challenge, and there is an extra overhead that the whole supply chain has to carry, and it increases cost for everybody. So therefore improving traceability and accountability in the supply chain ensures each party gets their fair share. Now this is, MSMEs can participate in this kind of supply chains in different roles. It is not necessarily a large company thing alone. So there are various roles that MSMEs can play in improving traceability, and I'm This is something that applies to small farmers at one end, and this is something that can apply to small food producers as well, and uh, small buyers as well. Potentially all kinds. And if you have traceability, my favorite concept is of a restaurant which basically generates various food propositions. If you can assure me that all the food that I'm eating is manufactured using products from Konkan, then I will be quite happy. For example, and but no restaurant currently offers it. If Uber Eats were to offer this kind of option to eat food which is generated out of all produce coming from Maharashtra, I don't know whether that those kind of things also can be done. Then ensuring a worker is assigned the right job, using SSI-based past and MSME skills management to understand. You can assign workers to the right task if you know their skills and you can find that out using uh, SSI. I've already spoken about reducing risk in operations. Then again, about customer engagement, you can provide a customized experience to customers without needing to store PII in the systems. This is one of the big advantages, and this is necessary. If you store PII, then you're adding cyber risk. If you don't have PII, then there is less cyber risk, but you can still achieve more or less the same things. And then I already spoke about multi-party work processes. So, these are some things you can leverage. Another important thing is this improving cross-functional decisions. Now, again, here, I'm not suggesting that MSMEs play a lead role in this. Now, the best example to understand this is product design process for a car. So there is a party, there is somebody who is basically designing the car. As the car's design changes, the component specifications required change, the material requirements change. Now, depending on where your MSME is in the whole chain, something changes for you. But if you are working to a old specification while this design has moved to a totally different thing, then that it's a waste of time and you have to adjust later. There may be cost for you as well. So how can you plug into those processes where people are designing new sets of product, and as the new iteration of the product design evolves, you are up to date about what basically the how your specification has changed. That is what this problem. This is one of the problems. So Prerna has done some work in this area. She in this area, and that's something that she can help with. Implications for MSME marketing: improving product propositions using partners. Now, this is what I was talking about, that you can use your website and see what are all the services I can sell from other parties. And blockchain is especially suitable for this because if they already have a process and you have a slightly different need from others, then they can slightly tweak one of the contracts and add you as one of the parties and do something very unique for you. So that is why basically this is one of the good things to do with blockchains. Another important thing is improving propositions using IoT. So customer IoT devices can have self-sovereign digital identities, and those digital identities can be controlled by the customer's self-sovereign identity. So when the device triggers some information, transfer information, then that information can be shared with your websites and your applications with customer consent, which can then used to automate some processes. So that is one of and there are various things that can be done with it. Only imagination is the only constraint here. Then improving brand image. MSMEs can leverage traceability, sustainability, modern slavery compliance data to create unique brands. So that these unique brands based on factually verifiable information, instead of Amitabh Bachchan coming and telling that this is good, that is good, we can actually verify whether it is organic or not organic. That's the kind of thing which adds value. So enabling better customer engagement, you can have customer preference information to customize experience. Then you can have improved loyalty propositions. There is at least one party in the OMPEG group which can leverage these kind of wallets to anchor or participate in coalition loyalty programs using blockchains and doing something on that front. And then MSMEs can improving the products. So this is a slightly different one. MSMEs can use SSI provided information, which is not basically collected using cookies surreptitiously, and the entire customer footprint to design products without storing and processing PI. This is not about customer experience. This is about using the information to design better products. So these are some of the applications that can be done for blockchains, and I would be delighted to take any questions, and happy to answer them.
Yeah. Thanks, Pratap. Thanks. Excellent presentation. A lot to take in, and that has come out in the question and answer session. Questions posed by some of the participants. So I am going to now unmute some of the people who, in a chronological order, who have asked the questions. So first is the Prashant. Okay, Prashant KR. I am unmuting you. You can ask you can unmute yourself and ask the question. Prashant. Okay, so the next one is, I think Prashant is not around. I can see him, but anyway, Japinder has a couple of questions. Japinder Chaudhary. Yeah, so Japinder, you can unmute yourself and ask the question, please.
Hello. Yeah, can you hear me?
Hi.
Yes, we can. Please go on.
Yeah. So actually, I'm completely basic in completely going to start in blockchain. I've never worked with this technology before. So I have very basic questions because I was exploring. First of all, like when you say like that the transaction is approved by the majority, and then if suppose when the majority approves the transaction and then it is accepted. So now example, we have a 10 servers, and out of which 5 says, oh, transaction is correct, and the 5 says the transaction is not correct. From that point of view, how the things will go in the blockchain?
Yeah, so basically, that transaction will be rejected, and maybe the next transaction will be considered.
Okay. Okay. So means then we will not take it as a valid transaction at all, kind of. Okay, can make sense. And the second one, the thing is, from the point of security, from this, because since I'm working in the government company over here, so one of the concern of there is major concern is of security, where they are always worried about their data leaks and all those stuff. So coming to that point of thing, how does our blockchain things can be hacked or not from the IT security point of view?
Okay.
Like
See,
example,
this is
yeah. Carry on. Sorry.
Yeah, I have written one article on LinkedIn. Like my last article on LinkedIn talks about this, and I gave a whole talk about this 2 months ago, which is all available on YouTube, except the first 4 minutes. First 4 minutes basically do not contain, they are blank, but after that the content is available, and that should answer many of your questions. There are a lot of misimpressions about this. See, blockchains is much better. There is a perception that everybody can see all the data. That is not correct at all. R3 Corda, for example, not every node has all the information. Only the relevant parties participate in the transaction. Only the relevant parties have copies of the data. So this for this notion of security, I'm not saying there are no problems, but there are a lot less security problems here than others. And then there are public blockchains and private blockchains. So I can't give you a one-shot answer, but I have given an elaborate answer. And if you I will let me look at if I can drop a link here.
Perfect. Yeah. So Lalit is the next one. Lalit, you can unmute yourself and ask the question. Yeah.
Thank you, Pratap. Amazing presentation, and thanks, Ompe. I have a question. So, I'm watching this space and interested in the banking applications, and one of that is payments. And you did mention CBDC, but before I jump into a question around that, performance has been highlighted all the time. Why this is not taking pace in industry applications? How true is that, or is it a myth? Could you comment on that?
See, there are two types of blockchains, right? There are the public blockchains and the private blockchains. So public blockchains, there is a significant limitation on the transaction rates. And however, there are various ways in which public blockchains transaction rates could themselves increase. If you use the public blockchains to basically, like Bitcoin, for example, if you use it to store the asset, But if, for example, the keys which represent ownership to the Bitcoin asset could be transferred, it could become a bearer asset where it could be transferred from one party to the other party without basically needing any operation on the blockchain. So that is one way to basically implement, increase the number of transactions, the transaction throughput. So very rarely you basically update the ownership on the blockchain. But if you could basically if there were a way of transferring assets, transferring those kind of keys, that would be another mechanism. And there are some people working on bearable assets. Then there is that's about public blockchains, and there is also the private. In private blockchains, there is a lot more. There is this mining and all this. The consensus processes used are different, and therefore higher transaction rates are possible. And a huge amount of transactions were done by the DTCC in the past. And as of now, the very fact that various CBDCs, CBDCs are being considered using blockchain indicates that this is very much within the realm of feasibility. There are two types of CBDCs also, one of which requires higher transaction rate than the other. So there are various options, and this is still an open question. The final word has not been said, but it is very much within the realm of feasibility, depending on what exactly you do with it.
Fantastic. So Sanjay is the next one. Sanjay Agre, he has a question. Yeah, you can unmute and ask the question. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Hello, sir. Thank you for organizing this session. Thank you, Ompek. So my question is, I work in technology, DevOps and automation space for Bank of America, and closely work with few data scientists as well. And this is also one of the technologies that interests me. So are there any? I don't know much about it, so I was just thinking of how I can get access to some resources, if you may have, from the developer's perspective.
Many of these technologies are open source. There is huge amount of information on the internet. Since August 2015, I have not paid a single penny of money to learn any blockchain. Whatever I have learned is from the internet.
Okay.
So so a lot of information is available. If you really struggle, let me know. I can point you to resources.
Fantastic. Rahul Rasal has some question. Rahul, you can unmute yourself and ask the question.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for this nice seminar. And yeah, Pratap, my question is, if I have to create a blockchain-based platform or a software for my business and customers, what's the kind of technology and what sort of financial commitment should I need to commit for that? Means general, by and large, like what are the things?
Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, so let me answer this in that there are public blockchains, private blockchains. Public blockchains, most of the things are open source anyway. Even in private blockchains, Karthi Koda, for example, you can develop applications using the open source version, and until you can use the enterprise version only when you when you want to scale it up and all. So the amount of things you can do for free is very high. The cost will be perhaps only on the infrastructure level, how much AWS capacity or how much Azure capacity you would require, and how much human effort you require. So that depends really on your use case. So otherwise, many of the blockchains you can develop solutions using regular languages. So your cost is going to be more of infrastructure and people rather than licenses, especially getting off the ground. And that would depend on your use cases as well. So.
Yeah, I think the one Prashant who missed earlier, I think yeah. Prashant, you can ask your question. Yeah.
Sir, good evening, sir. Thanks for a wonderful session. My question is, if at all we want to develop a fintech product to any specific SME sector, that product may be in the form of interface or application. Could it be, viable or not?
In blockchain territory, there are this session has been focused on end users of MSMEs as end users. I am not really getting a blockchain into production is doing a technology POC using blockchain or developing some application using blockchain is not too difficult, but that doesn't get it into production. Getting into production requires getting the right parties in the ecosystem around a table and then agreeing with them what should be built, what should not be built, and so on. So in that sense, you have to be very careful if you are venturing into a blockchain. The whole focus of today's talk was how can you use existing operational blockchains or those that are emerging as customers and partners and so on. Developing new blockchains, technology is only probably 30% of the struggle. The bigger struggle is basically getting the ecosystem partners to the table. So if you want to develop something, then suppose you get it off the ground, then basically the blockchain can integrate into websites and so on through regular APIs, REST APIs, whatever. That's basically, so you can integrate blockchain solutions which you have developed using APIs into existing applications.
Yeah, fantastic. So I'm just seeing actually a couple of people, they noted their questions, but they have dropped off. So I'm just looking through my list. Okay. So Prasad Kamdi, you can unmute yourself and ask the question.
Thank you. Can you hear me, Pratap?
Yes.
Yes.
Hi, Pratap. First of all, thank you so much for your time and Ompek for scheduling this event. I'm working with one of the big four here in UK. I have seen these blockchains being evolving in many of the BFSI clients, not only BFSI clients, but in different sectors. Now, my question is mostly, the clients gets confused on the use cases. Like, you have beautifully explained the use cases where the blockchain can be leveraged or can be benefit to the customer, not to the customer as well as to the providers. So do you have any real-time example, or do you want to share your experience on implementing a real-time example stating how it was evolved and how it benefited it to the customers?
See, as I said, I am constrained in giving examples, but I can probably point you to literature about some of the names I've taken. One of the, in the public domain, you can find information about Spunta. Spunta is a BFSI blockchain in Italy, where basically which is highly scaled up and you has a huge number of nodes and is processing huge volumes of transactions. That's one. Then there is the Marco Polo that I was mentioning. They also have huge amount of volumes in trade finance.
Fantastic. So next is Adesh Rawal. Yeah, Adesh, you can unmute yourself and ask the question.
Yeah, hi. Thanks a lot, Pratap, for this session. I want to see, are there any use cases for deploying blockchain and anti-money laundering detection? Because that's one place where banks are spending a lot of money and they're also getting a little regulatory scrutiny. So are there any use cases in money laundering detection?
Money laundering or KYC and AML are common applications of blockchain. But the way I would really, there are scenarios where, for example, suppose one party wants to transfer money to another party in another country. Now, for this financial transfer, there are various AML rules which come into practice. Now, depending on how this transfer has been created, the party which needs to execute this AML check varies. But AML check finally is an analytical check. So making sure that the right amount of data is submitted into that AML check is what blockchain can do. Blockchain by itself will never do the AML check because the amount of data which you need to check, the AML checks basically are it requires huge amount of data, sanctions, this, that, whatever, and so all of those checks basically they're analytical. So the role that is one aspect. And then KYC and AML blockchains are happening because what happens is that if you have, when you want to onboard somebody to any production blockchain, especially in the banking and financial services, you have to do KYC. And if you have gone through a KYC AML check once, then there is no point in everybody else repeating the same thing again, all over again. So because blockchain, once the KYC has been done, the data is immutable, and therefore potentially could be leveraged again by other parties, or at least what has been done could be augmented using the specific portion for the other party. So there are various scenarios in which AML can climb onto the bandwagon, which is primarily a KYC bandwagon. So for KYC, this kind of use cases are also there, but AML could also be added to those use cases. And this thing is happening in a lot of people are already doing this. It's not talked about much because it's part of the it's part of the regular work they do, because KYC is not their business. It is a compliance requirement for the core business. So they will talk about the core business more than the KYC, but KYC is being done using blockchain.
Okay, Rajan, Ravi's has messaged that his son has network problems. So probably we can take one more question, Rajan, if you're spotted.
Yeah.
And then we'll have you spotted anyone? We can take one question.
Not a problem. I think we still can take.
And then we can wrap
one or
up
two
the session.
questions.
Thank you.
That's not a problem. So I think there is a question. The recent question is from Arun Joseph.
Okay, we'll take that as last question, and we'll bring the session after that. We stop recording.
Yeah, that's fine.
Arun, you can ask the question. I'm trying to unmute. Once you ask the question, you can go on mute. Thank you.
Okay. Hi, Pratap. Thank you for the wonderful insights. Thank you very much. The question I had was about the loyalty wallet you said a friend of yours is developing. A blockchain-based loyalty wallet. You mentioned in your, or did I hear it wrong?
I mean, I said that blockchain-based loyalty wallets are being developed. I did not mention, I don't have a friend who is doing that, but yes, there are lots of blockchain-based loyalty wallets.
Is there somebody within this group who is doing it, or is it a?
Okay. Yeah. No. There are people in OMPEG who are doing such kind of things.
Okay, and is there a name you could mention at all?
Maybe offline.
Okay, I'll exchange the same question over LinkedIn, if I may.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Thank you very much.
Maybe I think we are almost 3:15 now.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think is it something? I think we probably have covered most of it anyways.
Yes, we have.
Yeah, we have. So that's fine. I think if a couple of them haven't been covered, then we apologize. But I think in the interest of time, we probably have to stop.
Okay. So as we close the session, Pratap, thank you very much for a very informative session. And blockchain is a wide subject, and we understand that it's difficult to cover all aspects of blockchain in one hour short session on a Sunday afternoon. But you touched upon lots of areas. And what we have done is we have shared your LinkedIn address on chat window. So anybody who wants to connect with Pratap, please feel free to connect on LinkedIn. As he mentioned earlier, that he was able to present his expert views. He's into full-time role with Tata, so he had clarified earlier that some of the customer use cases he may not be able to share. But please feel free to connect offline. Pratap, on behalf of OMPEG, thank you very much for giving a Sunday afternoon to us and delivering a very informative session. I'm sure all the people who attended found it useful, and there are lots of questions. We could take only few, not all.
One of the things I can offer is, if there are any questions, you send them to me, and I can respond to them
offline. Pratap, what we'll do is we have all the questions and people on chat window. We'll share the chat text, the entire file to you. So if there are people who wants to you connect to, you can do that as well via LinkedIn, and they have been advised to do so. So just for everyone's benefit, just few chat lines before I shared Pratap Tambe's LinkedIn profile, you can please feel free to connect with him on LinkedIn. Pratap, once again, thank you very much. Thank you everyone for joining. Before
Thank you for the
everyone goes, our pleasure. Thank you everyone for joining. Before we officially close the event, a quick note on OMPEG's next event, which will be on 8th of May. It will be done by two members, Madhuri Apte and Vinit Mohan, both in legal profession. The session is a member session, so members run their own events. This session is specifically focusing on how to sponsor parents permanently into UK, what demystifying and decoding the entire visa process. So they will highlight the visa process, the timelines, cost preparation, and of course, there'll be lots of question answers. So over next few days, you will see on social media the next event by Madhuri Apte and Vinit Mohan on how to sponsor parents permanently UK. So stay connected, follow OMPEG social media. You can follow us on OMPEG Facebook group. You can download my OMPEG app. You can also follow us on Twitter at OMPEG UK. Thank you very much for giving us all the time this afternoon. And we will now stop the recording and we'll hang around for maximum 10 minutes if there are any open questions. Otherwise, to everyone else, wish you a lovely Sunday evening and great start to the next week.